Hey guys, how are you doing today? In this video, I will show you how to write your own custom nodes inside of ComfyUI. I will explain about the example node inside of the custom node folder that comes default by ComfyUI. Then I will show you how you can write your own using that example node as a base. We are going to take these two ClipTextEncode, one for the positive prompt, one for the negative prompt, and combine it into a single prompt where we can have a positive text, a negative text, and then connect it to a case sampler. Let's begin by understanding how ComfyUI loads a custom node. So let's go into File Explorer, navigate to where ComfyUI is on your local machine, and you should see three folders: ComfyUI, the Python embedding, and update folder. Go into ComfyUI, and you should see a custom nodes folder. Enter that folder, and if you are using a newly freshly installed ComfyUI, then you will have only an example underscore node.py .example file. If you have already installed a few custom nodes, then you will have some folders in here which will look something like this. So all of these folders, they are a custom node which I've installed using Git or the ComfyUI manager. Going back to the vanilla installation of ComfyUI, where we only have the example underscore node.py .examples, let's start up this version of ComfyUI. So open a terminal, navigate to the ComfyUI installation, and then you will do your run NVIDIA GPU.bat file. If we take a look at the terminal, you will see that ComfyUI is start up fast and open up the browser interface right away. But if you already have custom nodes, you will see that ComfyUI will first load up some of the custom nodes and then continue on loading down below, as well as install any of the packages that required before starting the web UI. This may take some time depending on how many custom nodes you have installed. Let's go back to File Explorer and let's rename the example underscore node.py .example to simply example underscore node.py. So remove the .example at the end, press enter. You may get a confirmation box. Click on yes. And now you have a Python file. Open the Python file using your favorite code editor. I will be using Visual Studio Code. This file gives you an example on how to write your own custom node. It is just one file and everything is inside it. So at the top, we have a class. It's called example. We have an initialization pod. It's also called a constructor in some other programming languages. Then we have a class method. In this case, it is input types. We go down, we have a return types, a function, category, and then we have the actual function. Now at the bottom, we have two important pieces of information. We have a node class mappings as well as a node display name mappings. So let's minimize this file. Let's go back to the terminal. And now we are going to run NVIDIA GPU.bat. So starting ComfyUI. So that was quick. Let's go back to the terminal. And this time you will see import times for custom node 0.0 seconds. And it found our example underscore node.py. So the way that custom nodes work inside of ComfyUI, if a Python file which is inside the custom node folder has these values, then the ComfyUI, when loading up, will load this file, but it will load it as a custom node. So if I go inside the web browser, right click on add node. At the bottom, I have example, and then I have my example node, which just says hello world here. Let's try to see how a node works inside of ComfyUI. So I'm going to add a simple node here. Let's do an image node. and we are going to do a load image. Now, in this case, we have display name at the top. So it says load name. When I right click on add node, go into image, I also have this name here, load image. This is going to come in handy when we are trying to name our custom node. Next, we can see that we have inputs. So we have a name here. We also have a file, and this node outputs an image as well as a mask. If we take a look at the key sampler node, we can see that it has the typical inputs that we've seen previously. So seed, steps, CFG, these are values that we can change, but there's also inputs in the form of another node output. So a load checkpoint outputs a model, and this model can be passed in as an input to the key sampler. Similarly, we have positive, negative, and latent image. And this sampler, this key sampler, is outputting a latent image. Let's try to visualize this example custom node inside the code itself. So at the top, we have a class called example. This name here has to be unique. So you cannot have another custom node name as example. If you go down, let's forget about the init for a second. This input types, which accept a parameter of s, returns a dictionary, and this dictionary defines what will be the input types of the node. So in here, we can see it is accepting an image, and we have this image here. Then we can see that we have fields. We have an integer field. We have a floating point field. We have something called print to screen, as well as a string field. And all of these are reflected in our custom node. So the image is at the top, the integer field is here, floating point field is here, print to screen toggle button is here, as well as the string field, hello world here. So this function, or I should say class method of input types, is what is defining these input fields inside the custom node. Now, similarly, the outputs, if we go down, it's defined by the return types here. In this case, we have image as the return type, and we can see that we have an image as our return type in the example node. Now, this node is also doing something behind the scene. When we connect an image to a node and we output something else, the node is doing something. And what defines what that node will do is this function here. So this function is telling us what is the name of the function that is going to process what is happening behind the scene. And in this case, we are saying function is equal to tests, and tests is defined here as a Python method or function. Because it is inside a class, we call it method. But if you're new to programming, just think of function and method as the same thing. Now, in this case, this function is just checking if we are printing to the screen, and it will print something on the screen. Or if the print to screen is disabled, it will skip this part and just return the image. We can actually see this by adding an image and a preview image node. So let's disable it first. Click on Q, and we have an output here. But if we go into the terminal, let me put the terminal down in this section here. We don't see anything. We just see God prompt executed in a few seconds. Now, if I toggle this button to enable and click on Q prompt, now I can see all the values that were passed to the function. So integer value was 0, float was 1.0, and we have it here, as well as the text hello world. If I change this value, let's say hello YouTube, change the integer value and change the floating value point, click on Q. Now I have these updated values here. So basically, we've seen how we can take the input, do some kind of processing with it, and output something else afterwards. Now, let's take a look at this section in the code. So I'm going to close out the browser and I will comment out these two lines, the node class mapping line, as well as the node display name mapping. In Python, the way that we comment a block of code or a code line is by adding a hash or pound sign in front of that line. This means that when the code is running, these lines will be ignored. I've stopped the previous ComfyUI interface and I'm now running a new run nvidia._gpu.bat file. Okay, so this is what we got. This time we have import failed and it cannot import the file because we've disabled these two lines. So whenever you are creating or writing your own Python file, make sure that you have these two lines enabled and give it a name. Now, next, let's try to see what this example node does inside the node display name mapping. I'm going to add modify to it. Click on save. Make sure to enable these two lines by uncommenting them. Remove the hashtag from it. Restart the ComfyUI. Now, at this time, it was successful and we can see the change right away. So in our example node, it says example node modify there. If I right click on add node, go to example, I can see the name change as well. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is this example here then? Let's take a look. So if I modify it and I say example_test, and I still have my example node modify here, go into the terminal, exit out, and rerun ComfyUI. I will add the node back. So go into add node, example, and right away I see example here instead of example node modify as we've suggested here. So what is happening right now? And this is because we changed this name here. But let's see what happens when we add this node. I'm going to click on example. I still have the node. The name says example at the top. I still have the input image. If I try it by adding an image, try to get an output from it, click on Q, I have an image. So the node is clearly working, but the name is not. So maybe you already know about this. If we go up, we can see that we have the node class mappings. And this one is defining what is the name that we are going to use in order to map the example class that we have. So this here, this example is referring to the example class that we have at the top. So for example, let's say I change the name to example and then I will do change, click on save, go all the way down, leave this as it is, change this one back to how it was originally, click on save and run ComfyUI again. Now you can see we are getting an error and the import failed again. So this example that we have here has to match the name that we have at the top. So if I copy example_change, go all the way down, replace this example to example_change, and then run ComfyUI again, and you see it works. I can generate the image as well. So now we know what these two lines are doing. I'm going to split my screen into two, just for this example. It's the same file. So at the top, I have class example_change. That's the same thing. So what is happening here is we are just putting a name here. This name can be anything. Then we are linking this example_change class and putting it here. We are telling ComfyUI that whenever we refer to example inside of node display name mappings, and there are other places as well that we can use it. But for now, let's consider what we have on this screen. So node display name mappings. If we have this example, which is the same thing as at the top, so these two are the same, then we are referring to this class, which is here. And finally, This here, this is just the name that will be displayed to the user when they are selecting that node. So I'm going to go back to File Explorer. I will right click on New File, and I will choose a text document file. Now, if you know how to do it inside of Visual Studio Code, or if you are using Sublime Text or any other code editor, you can do it from there. I will name this example2.py and remove the .txt file extension. Accept the change. I will go into Visual Studio Code and load that new file. I'm going to use the split screen functionality inside of Visual Studio Code by clicking on this button here. So on the left, I have the example file. Let me change it back to how it was. So example on the top, class example. Go down, we have example, and then referring to the class, the name is example node. Now, let's say you want to make a custom node. The first thing that you want to do is to have an idea of what that custom node will be doing. So let's go into ComfyUI and see a couple of things that we can modify. I'm going to clear the canvas and load the default view. Now, in the default view, we can see right away that we have the positive prompt, and then we have a negative prompt. They are separated. So how about we make a custom node that will contain the positive prompt as well as the negative prompt in a single node. So we are going to have something like this. These two will be in one node. We are going to have positive and negative at the bottom, like this. Of course, you can add more, but I'm just going to show you as an example how you are going to do it. So let's isolate this part. Now we can see that we will require the clip as input. We are going to have a text in the code. It's called as string for the positive prompt, as well as a second one for the negative prompt. So we're going to have two string fields. We don't need to have two clips. One clip field is okay. Inside the code, we are going to pass it to both the positive as well as the negative encoder. Then we have to output two conditioning. One would be for the positive prompt, one would be for the negative prompt. Okay, let's try to implement it. Let's make as if we don't know all of these by heart. So the way that you are going to do it is open the example file, always keep it handy. The most important part is the bottom one. That is what will tell ComfyUI that your file is actually a custom node. So copy it and paste it in your file. In my case, it is example2.py. I'll go all the way to the top and make some space. Now I'm going to call mine as conditioning prompts. Now remember, my class name will have to be this exact name. So I will go at the top to class and paste that exact name. And just so that I don't get an error inside my IDE, I will do pass here. Now this name here, I can leave it as it is, but I'm going to change it just so that we can differentiate between the two files. We'll change it to example2. That is what my file name is at the top. And because I change it here, I have to change it here as well. Then what will be the name that will be displayed to the user when they right click on add node and then find it from the list? I'm going to call it conditioning prompts. And this name here, you can have spaces, but at the top where you are creating the class, you cannot have spaces. Now there are a couple of things as well that you'll need inside the class for it to work. If we go into the example node on the left side, we can see we have an init. You can actually leave this one. We will require the class method inputs, right? Now, if you remember, we need clip string. So we are going to define this inside the input types here. There's a good documentation here that you can use. Basically, what you need to do is to return something. You need to return, in this case, it's going to be a dictionary. And we can have optional as well as required fields. The first thing would be required. This also is a dictionary. And if you go in here, we need clip. Now, I already know that in ComfyUI, the clip is actually called clip like this in all caps. But if you don't know how these names are, whether it's called conditioning as uppercase or lowercase, you can go into File Explorer. If you are inside of ComfyUI, go back once. So you can press the arrow key here. And in here, there will be a file called nodes.py. You can right-click this, open it inside of your editor. I will double-click on it to open it. And this file is quite long. It has all the default nodes that come with ComfyUI. So we have our ClipTextEncode here. And if we go into input types, we'll see that it's accepting the string clip as well as this capital letter clip. This is how ComfyUI will know what this is. I will leave this node as a tab here. We can refer to it later. Let's go back to example 2. Now, this has to be a tuple or tuple, however you want to pronounce it. In order to make this into a tuple, we'll have to put a comma at the end. Okay. Now, next, let's go back into the model here. And we also need the text for positive as well as the negative from. So again, if you're confused as to how to write the code, go back into the example. And we've already seen text in the example node. I do it really quickly. And this field here is string fields. It is allowing us to pass in text, right? You can type in text here. So all you have to do is to find where this is written in the example file. If we go down, we can see string field and then string. Then we have multi-line false. We have a default value of hello world. Now, this is really good because we can copy this entire thing. After the clip, we'll put a comma, go down one line, and paste everything that we have here. Now I'm going to click on save. You can do it by file, save, or you can just press Ctrl S to save. I don't need this pass anymore. Now I'll also need a return type. So I'm going to copy the return type from there into here. I will need a function to do some kind of processing. So in this case, the function is called test. I will leave the name test and define the function test here. It's actually a method. That's why we are passing self here. And when I right click on add node, you see I have an example here. This example is being defined here under category. So we'll copy category and paste it in our file. Now I'm going to call mine example 2, just so that we can differentiate between the two. So this should be enough. Let's test by exiting the server and running a new ComfyUI. Okay, so we did not get any errors. If I go into the terminal again, in this case, I can see import times, and I have my example node, which is the default one, as well as example2.py got loaded correctly. I'm going to clear the canvas, right click on add node, and the example without any number is the default example node. The example 2 has conditioning prompts, and this one, as you can see here, it's accepting clip, which we define, and it has a string field. Right now it's saying hello world, and this one is outputting an image, which is not correct. So we have to correct this. Plus this field here, we want to make it multiple lines, because if I go into conditioning ClipTextEncode, I can write multiple lines here. So we want something similar to this. Also, this image has to be a conditioning node. So let me go back to the example2.py and fix those errors. So the first thing that we see here is string field is string, multi-line is false. Let's change it to true. I'm going to remove the comments that we have at the end. You can leave it there if you want it for a future reference. And default value, I'm going to change to positive text. And then I'm going to copy this, paste it into negative text at the bottom. Now let's see this change. It's good practice whenever you are writing your own custom node to keep testing your code. Okay, it's loaded. Right click, add node, example 2, conditioning prompts. And right away we can see something is wrong here. So if we go into the code, we've defined the clip at the top. That one is showing here. We've defined a negative text. That one is showing here. But where is the positive prompt? The reason as to why the positive prompt is missing is because the code gets run from top to bottom. So when ComfyUI is reading the code, it is reading required. Okay, we have clip. It put the clip here, and then it sees a string field positive text. It will put positive text here. And because we've used the same name here, a string field, this time is changing it into negative text. So all we have to do is to change this to, let's say, positive text, and this one to negative text. Load ComfyUI once again, and this time we can see the node got updated correctly. So if I delete it and add a new node, we can see positive and negative text. Now, lastly, we need to modify the image and change it into conditioning. So this will be done inside the return types, and we can just change this to conditioning like so. ComfyUI knows what conditioning means. Again, where I'm getting clip, a string, conditioning, that's coming from nodes. And we can see here under the ClipTextEncode, the return types is conditioning like so. If you ever need a particular type that you need to return out, then you can find it under the nodes.py file. Save, restart. So right click, add node, example 2, conditioning prompts, and now we have what we needed. So we have a name at the top, we have the clip, we have a positive prompt, a negative prompt, and it is outputting a conditioning. Let's see if we can wire in a clip to this, if it will accept the clip, and if we can take a conditioning and wire it to a key sampler, positive or negative. So I'm going to add a key sampler. Doesn't matter whether it's the advanced or the simple one. Now we'll also add a load checkpoint just so that I have the clip in here. So if I take the clip from the load checkpoint, drag it on top of my conditioning prompts custom node, you can see it get connected right away. So ComfyUI is accepting this clip into here. Now, similarly, if I take a positive prompt from the key sampler and drag it on top of my conditioning prompt, get connected to conditioning here. But now we have a problem because this conditioning prompts needs to output a positive and a negative. So we can do it like the key sampler is doing, having two different fields for the conditioning. Let's see how we can implement this. So we already have a field for the conditioning here. We can simply add a second field. Okay, so it got updated right away. We have conditioning at the top, and then we have a second one for negative. Now, if I were to wire everything correctly, like model goes into model and add an empty latent, do a VA decode, send this over to VA, and then output an image. This will not work. Click on Q prompt, so loading the model. I'm using the SD 1.5 base model. You can use any model for your example. Okay, so it goes into the conditioning prompt, and then it gave us an error. It's telling us unexpected keyword argument, pause underscore text. This is our positive text. Now, everything that we've defined at the top as an input types, which is required, will have to be passed to our function at the bottom here. So after self, you'll put a comma. We have a positive text and we have a negative text. These are all the values that we are passing over. Now, in this example case, it's not doing anything. It's just basically inverting the image by doing 1 minus the image. That's what inversion an image means, at least in the coding language, and it's returning this new image, the inverted image. This is not what we want. What we want is to pass these text file, encode it, and get back a conditioning. So we'll have to go into nodes.py, and we can see how it's doing the encoding here. It is taking the clip, it is taking the text, and then doing encoding, basically clips, tokenize it, encode from tokens, and then it is returning the condition here. So for now, let's copy everything from here and paste it inside a test function that we have. I will indent the code better. Okay, so now we have this. We need to change the text name here to our positive text. Now we need something similar for the negative prompt. Thankfully, the negative prompt is also using the ClipTextEncode. So if I go into the ComfyUI and load the default, we can see that the positive prompt is using the ClipTextEncode. The negative prompt is also using a ClipTextEncode. So it's the same tokenization that is happening, same encoding that is happening. We can move the return down, and we can duplicate these two lines. Let's just say this token now is going to be for the negative. Let's do negative. The top one is going to be positive. I want to pass this here. So this token positive, pass it here. This token negative, we want to pass it here. Negative text will go into the tokenizer here. And then again, we have to differentiate between these two conditions that we are receiving. So I'm just going to do POS or positive, and the bottom one is going to be negative. Now when returning, we need to return two things now. This first one as well as a second one. I'm going to put it on different lines so that it's easier to see. So this is going to be the positive, and the second one is going to be for the negative. We'll need to change the name. Condition positive is going to be here. Pool positive is going to be here. And then the same thing for the negative. Okay, so let's close out of ComfyUI and restart the web interface. I'm going to clear it and load the default once again. Then, just so that we can compare things, I'm going to right click on KeySampler, convert the seed into an input, and then drag seed down to add a primitive that's going to control the seed. I will set the control of the generative fix so that we can have the same seed for both this as well as our new example 2 conditioning prompt field. I'm going to copy the text at the top, get the clip from here, pass it here, and then I will leave it as is and generate an image. In the meantime, I'm going to construct the second one with the key sampler. I got the first one. I'm going to queue for the second one now, and we did not get any errors. It accepted everything from our custom node and passed it to the key sampler, and as you can see, it is actually generating here by this green line. If I go into the ComfyUI terminal, I can see it got the prompt requested, and it is going and generating the image. Okay, as you can see, both images, this one comes from the default separated ClipTextEncode node, and this one comes from our custom conditioning prompts here, and it is the exact same image. So we know that our conditioning prompt here, which has a positive and a negative, is working. Now, with this knowledge, you can create any customized node that you want. So let's say you want to combine the VAE code with a preview node or a save node so that you don't have two of these every time you want to see the image. You can do the exact same thing and decode the latent space image as well as output the image within the same function. So you can have a function here that is doing both things at the same time. You can also have other nodes. So you can do something like a LoRa node For example, it takes a model, takes a clip, but it also returns the model and the clip. In this case, it is patching the model. So we are adding information to the model and returning that new model here. So as an example, you can see that we have the impact back. In this case, it is the 2D tailor pipe. So what it's doing, it's taking all of these input and outputting a single pipeline. And we can take this pipeline, connect it to a different node, and it will have all of these information inside this one line. So I will stop here for today for this video. We've seen how we were able to create our own custom node. We were able to change this part here, combine it into a single node, and make it work inside of ComfyUI. Now, there are a lot of things to explore as custom nodes. Let me know if you would like to see more videos on writing your own custom nodes. Thank you for watching this video until the very end. Have a nice day ahead. I will see you next time.